So last class, I kind of left you guys with the cliffhanger that this guy named Constantine impacted and influenced the way that the Western world would go for the next several hundred years, more than almost any other person, and kind of left it at that and said that we talk about him this class. So today we are going to talk about Constantine, and after we talk about him, we will talk about the fall of the Roman Empire. So starting here, should be on page 12 of your packets here. How did Emperor Constantine change the Roman Empire and world history during his reign? Well, first thing we need to know about Constantine is that he was crowned emperor in York, England. Right there's a picture of York Minster Cathedral in England, all right, far away from the city of Rome itself, and you will need to know where he was crowned emperor in order to kind of see how far the Roman Empire had spread by that point. So in the early 300s, Christianity was still outlawed in the Roman Empire. It had been outlawed for over 250 years by this point, and Christians were still being persecuted because of that. But in 313 AD, Constantine passed something called the Edict of Milan. The Edict of Milan, very important document, and this legalized Christianity in the empire, and it ended Christian persecution. Shortly afterward, Constantine converted to Christianity himself and made it the official religion of Rome. And this replaced the Roman pantheon of gods. Remember, I said that the Roman pantheon of gods was borrowed from the Greek pantheon of gods, so going way back there. So Constantine essentially made the Roman Empire a Christian empire. Not only did he change it from being polytheistic to monotheistic, but he changed it to a Christian empire. He even put Jesus on Roman coins instead of himself. And this action of Constantine affected Western civilization to a huge effect, because with the Edict of Milan, he kind of set the precedent, he set the example of being tolerant of those who disagree with your beliefs. We saw that with Cyrus the Great back in the 500s BC when he gave religious freedom to his people. So this was really important precedent that Constantine set of being tolerant to those who disagree with your beliefs. And when he converted to Christianity, most of the Roman Empire converted to Christianity with him. And remember, the Roman Empire at this point encompassed about 25% of the global population. So this spread to pretty much all of Europe and later to the Americas, because Europeans explored in the Americas and spread Christianity there as well. So this made Christianity the world's largest religion, which it still is today. Without Constantine, this may never have happened. So that's why I say he impacted Western civilization more than almost anybody in history, because he changed the Roman Empire, which then changed Europe, which then spread to the Americas. So Rome's conversion to Christianity is kind of ironic, because they were the empire that crucified Jesus. All right, the empire that crucified Jesus then went on to spread his teachings around the entire world 300 years later. Okay, many regions of the world have changed majority religious affiliation. Okay, that's not completely unique to the Roman Empire. For example, Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, it used to be mostly Christian, like at this time it was, but nowadays it's mostly Muslim. So that has happened a lot. Regions of the world have changed their religious affiliation, but very few specific countries or empires have changed faiths just on a dime like this while remaining the same country or empire. I mean, Asia Minor is not Asia Minor anymore, it's Turkey, and with that change came a new religion. Okay, so for a country to remain the same country and completely switch religious affiliations, this is very unique to the Roman Empire, and it's because of Constantine the Great. Now, Constantine in 324 changed the headquarters, or the Roman capital, from the city of Rome itself to the city of Byzantium. All right, so you see that on the map right there. He moved his headquarters and, in turn, the Roman capital from the city of Rome, right here in Italy, to Byzantium. And he renamed the city after himself. He renamed it Constantinople. These days, that is modern-day Istanbul. So it's changed names 3 times. It used to be Byzantium, Constantine changed the name to Constantinople. And when Muslims took over this area, they said, hey, we don't want to have this city named after the guy who spread Christianity to the world. We're going to name it Istanbul. Okay, so it's changed names a lot, but the fact that Constantine switched his headquarters from the western half of the empire to the eastern half of the empire, that caused much of Roman culture as well to shift from the to shift from the west to the east. Okay, and the eastern half of the empire ended up lasting much longer than Rome itself did. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about the fall of Rome. Well, when I say the fall of Rome, I really mean this area in the pink. The Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, but the rest of the empire, this eastern half, became known as the Byzantine Empire. So with this move from Rome to Byzantium, renamed Constantinople, Constantine kind of preserved half of the Roman Empire. Now, the Council of Nicaea was in 325, and this was established by Constantine, organized by him, and this was the council that was held to finalize and solidify which books were going to go into the Bible. Okay, which ones were going to be considered Holy Scripture and which ones were not. There's a total of 66 books in the Bible, 39 from the Old Testament, 27 from the New Testament, and this Bible basically made the modern biblical canon, the modern list of books that are in the Bible today. And it made it official. And it also articulated several basic Christian doctrines, for example, the divinity of Christ and the Trinity, and those doctrines were going to be held in common among all believers. So this brought a lot of unity to Christianity, a lot of consistency to it. So the Council of Nicaea was very significant for religious history and also for the history of the Roman Empire. So now we get to the fall of Rome itself. The fall of Rome is one of the, in some ways, most unfortunate events of history, but also some of the most significant events as well. So in 476, the western half of the Roman Empire, including the city of Rome itself and all of Italy, was conquered by the barbarians. Okay, so the barbarians were a group of people who were not Romans, usually from the north, okay, the area that we might now consider to be Germany or Poland or Russia. All right, so you have the Vandals, the Visigoths, all right, a lot of other types of barbarians is what they were called. So barbarians at the gates, okay, that is how the Roman Empire fell. Now, when the Western Roman Empire fell, the eastern half of the empire was not taken over. All right, so at the bottom map there, you see that area in the purple. That was not overtaken by the barbarians like the area in the yellow was. Okay, so the area in the yellow, that is what we call the fall of Rome, when all of that fell to the barbarians. But the eastern half became known as the Byzantine Empire. Now, they still considered themselves to be Romans, even though they are in the eastern half of the former Roman Empire, and Rome itself does not belong to that kingdom. Its capital was Constantinople. They did still consider themselves to be Romans because they wanted to be remembered as a part of that tradition. All right, so going into the Middle Ages, that area in the pink is known as the Byzantine Empire. Now, a big question of history is, why did the Roman Empire fall? Okay, very big question. And one big reason why Rome fell after it had existed and had been powerful for so many centuries was because the Romans had conquered too much territory. We've talked about this before. If you spread yourself too thin, if your land spreads way too far away from the capital city, your empire becomes very difficult to govern, especially without modern technology. Remember the Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut. She knew this, which is why she didn't want her kingdom to spread too far, but most empires have not been like that. They have spread themselves too thin and therefore become susceptible or vulnerable to invasion. And that's exactly what happened to Rome. So that made the empire more weak and susceptible to conquest. Now, the road to Rome falling was a long one, starting with Commodus around 180 AD, going all the way to 476 AD. All right, but one big reason why Rome fell was because it got way too big. So the fall of Rome is considered to be the end of antiquity, okay, the end of the ancient times, and the beginning of the Middle Ages, or what we might call the Dark Ages. So during this time, the Byzantine emperor was the head of the Eastern Church, and he appointed patriarchs or church leaders. And things were different in Western Europe during the Middle Ages, okay, because they had been overtaken by the barbarians. So you have the Pope, or the head of the church in Rome, remained the head of the Western Church, not of the Eastern Church, but of the Western Church. However, after 476, there was no emperor over the Pope to appoint or to govern church leaders. So this became really important regarding civil authority, because then the Pope in the western half of Europe became very, very powerful, whereas the Eastern Church patriarchs did not become as powerful because they had the Byzantine emperors to kind of keep them in check. So now there was no one to really challenge the Pope, and therefore popes became very powerful during the Middle Ages. Next unit, we're going to talk a lot about the Middle Ages, and religion plays a big part in the Middle Ages. And popes became very, very powerful, in some cases corrupt, and this in part led to the Protestant Reformation, which we'll talk about in Unit 3. That was in the 1500s, and that impacted the state of present-day Christianity. So whenever we make that bridge there, it's pretty simple to see how Constantine legalizing Christianity in the Roman Empire and then becoming a Christian himself and then spreading it throughout the empire, that did not lead to the fall of Rome, but then when the fall of Rome happened, you can understand where the state of Christianity ended up and why it is the way it is today. Okay, so history is this chain of events here. It's important to be able to connect them in that way. So as always, let me know if you have any questions. This is the last page of our unit here. Let me know if I can explain Christianity, Constantine, and the fall of the Roman Empire any better.